Welcome back to KidSpeed. Today we're going to show you how to assemble, start, and make all the necessary adjustments to these Mototec two-stroke gas pocket bikes. When you get the bike, there are only a few things you need to do for assembly. The first one is adjusting the handlebars and brake levers. We'll show you how to do that right now. The second one is adjusting the chain. And the third one, if you've got this Phantom model, is attaching the gas tank. There are a few items that are going to come with the bike. Be careful, some of these may be attached to the foam packaging, so check that before you throw them away. So you should have three things. You should have the user guide, a toolkit with some useful tools in it, and a little package with 3 sets of nuts and bolts. Now, these first two here are going to be for the handlebars. There are 2 of those. And this third one, with the hex head and bolt, is going to be for the gas tank. The first thing you want to do is put the bolt in this handlebar clamp here. You can see it right here by the handlebars. I'm going to take this little nut and bolt here and feed it right through there. This is a little tricky, so I've got here a 10mm socket. I put that nut in there. I'm going to come through from one side, push that bolt through the hole, and use the socket wrench here to provide a little bit extra force on there to get that started. All right, what you're going to want to do here is slide these up to the top and then pivot this brake lever down a little bit. You can see there's a bolt right here that allows you to pivot this brake lever up and down. And then that bolt we put on right here, that allows you to slide that handlebar up and down. So as you're looking down at the bike, you really want these, you want to straighten this up, line it up with the windshield there, and then get these handlebars on a 45-degree angle all the way to the top, and then pivot that brake handle down to give yourself the maximum clearance to turn. You might have to play with it a little bit, but that's really your goal. Is my personal preference here is to leave about a 1/4 inch of space, having that handlebar from all the way to the top. So this also has an adjuster. You can get this angled the way you want so that button is in the most convenient spot. There is a Allen nut here. You can use the supplied wrench to tighten that up as well. I'll have this Allen wrench here supplied in your toolkit. You can take that and this bolt here and tighten up this. You want to hold this side while you're tightening that up. Hey, this is the Phantom model. So we have our gas tank is right here. We're going to take these 2 bolts here, secure them up. There's 2 locations for that underneath. If you have the GT model, your gas tank is up here. On this model, this is just decorative. So let's go ahead and do up that gas tank. The thing you'll notice here is this little here that says 25-to-1 gas oil mix required. These are 2-stroke engines. The oil is in the fuel. It's mixed into the fuel to lubricate the engine, which is kind of nice because you don't have to do oil changes, but you do have to mix the fuel ahead of time. 2-stroke engines are popular because of their power delivery. They can deliver up to twice the power of a 4-stroke engine. They're really punchy, but the downside is you do have to mix the fuel oil ahead of time. What I would recommend is buying a dedicated fuel container for your 2-stroke fuel. You can get a small one at a hardware store that looks a little bit like this. Then you can fill up your small gas tank, put the required amount of oil in it, and shake it. Now, some of the models come with a little fuel bottle like this. You can also buy them from Amazon. They've got some nice little marks on there. We're going to show you how to use this right now. All right, these numbers are a little hard to see here, but that says 25-to-1 there. And that's the line for your gas, and that's the line for your oil. So we're going to go ahead and fill the gas up to that first line, and then we'll top the oil up to the second line. All right, you can see we've got the gas up to that first line. Now this is a standard Honda Mineral 2-stroke oil. I bought this at my local power sports dealer for a whopping $9. Lasts you quite a while. So I'm going to take this, we're going to fill it up to the next line. And then you are ready to go. Step, you can take a funnel, get that gas in there. I would just start with half the bottle here. Secure the gas cap back on. If you are going to mix in a larger can, the mixture is 5 ounces of oil for every gallon of gas. So if you get a small 2-gallon gas can for your 2-stroke or even a 1-gallon gas can, that's 5 ounces of oil for that 1-gallon gas can, or 10 ounces of oil for that 2-gallon gas can. Okay, before you try and start it, just make sure any kill switches or any tethers or any keys that you have, keys are turned on, any tethers that you have, safety tethers, usually those red pieces with the curly cord attached, that they're attached. This one has a kill switch, just make sure that is good. Then we can just make sure we're primed, make sure there's no air in the system. Okay, make sure your choke is in the up position. Take your pull start here. Don't be too rough with these. They can't take a lot of abuse. Just give that a nice pull. Once you have the bike running, you can put this choke lever back down in the down position. The final step of assembly here is adjusting the chain. Let's get that done and you'll be ready to ride. Just like this bike's bigger brothers, you can loosen and tighten the chain by loosening the nut on the axle and adjusting these tightening bolts. This side of the bike where the brake's located, we have a 14mm bolt to undo. On the other side is a 12mm bolt. We're going to go ahead and use a socket just to get that off a little easier. All right, coming around to this side, you can see that chain's still really tight. We're going to slack off these bolts here at the back with a 10mm wrench. Now you're going to have to push the wheel forward here a little bit. Several methods to do this. You can lift it up and give it a hit. You can see now our chain has significantly more give in it. And now for the easy part, you can just tension up these bolts a little bit until the tension is right. As you're doing these up, you want to tighten them up until you get any slack taken out of them, and keep an eye on the chain tension as you go. See here, I've got just a little bit of play in here. This is a really good tension for the chain. So you want to make sure the chain's actually quite loose before you go to tighten these bolts back up. I've noticed that as you tension this back up, you tend to get just a little bit of extra tightness in the chain. So you can see here the chain's got a little bit of slack in it, not too much, but as I tighten these bolts up, we're going to have a nicely tensioned chain here. All right, we're going to go ahead and take this chain guard off. There are 3 5mm hex bolts on here to take off. All right, let's take that off. You can see this is a different bike. You can see this chain is super tight, so we're going to have to loosen that one as well. All right, here's a view from the rear of the bike. The big thing we're going to be looking at today is making sure this chain is straight. So when you adjust this chain and tighten it on each side, the wheel actually turns this way or that way. So if you tighten this one up a bit, it turns that way. When you tighten this one up, it kind of turns back that way. And when you're done, if you've not done it perfectly, your wheel can be on this angle, which means this sprocket here is on an angle, which means your chain's going to pop off. So we've got to make sure we get that straight. This is one of the most common things that happens with these bikes. So we're going to walk you through it today. What I see most commonly is someone will tighten this nut up here to try and tighten this chain. That'll actually turn this wheel on an angle like this and force the chain to come off. So you tighten up the chain because it was coming off, and then you make the problem worse by setting it out of alignment. You can't really even go on the length of the thread here too, to be honest. When I first started, I tried to just judge how much thread was coming out here and get them the same. But quite honestly, that's not the perfect indicator either. Okay, I'm going to start again by loosening these. I've already loosened this nut here ahead of time to save us a bit of time. All right, so first thing as before, I've loosened this wheel, give that a bit of a hit. Now we've got a bit of slack in this chain. The big thing we want to do now is make sure this sprocket is correctly aligned. So I've done my best here to get this camera straight in line with the frame of the bike. It's really difficult because you've got these plastic pieces which may not be on perfectly straight. So you've got to try and use the frame as a point of reference. But just from eyeballing it, it does look like this wheel is a little bit this way when compared to the frame being straight up and down here. So we're going to go ahead and adjust for that. The other thing we can do is, when you're looking at the chain, you can see where the chain tension is when you rotate that wheel. Especially when you turn it backwards, you'll see it not line up perfectly straight on the sprocket there. One interesting thing I can see already with this particular bike is you can see this bolt is skewing inwards like this, as opposed to this one, which is nice and straight coming out here. I can see that right away. What appears to have happened here is this bolt, this particular one here, is on backwards, either from the factory or from someone that had it before me. I'll take that, turn that around, put this bolt back on, snug that up, and you can see now, hopefully, that that's nice and straight. Things like that bad bolt or that bolt being on backwards can really set you off course, because as you go to do the repair, something's not right and you can't tell. So just keep an eye out, make sure everything looks good. If something doesn't look right, look for the obvious solution. I mean, this was just on backwards. It wasn't bent or anything like that. It was just on backwards. I'm going to straighten up this wheel now. Because this was on backwards, we're having some difficulty getting that straight. So I'm going to go ahead and straighten this up. This one needs to come back a little further to do that. The other trick that I found that served me pretty well is actually loosen these off, both of these off quite a bit. Lift this up and spin the wheel a few times. You find that the wheel might actually adjust itself into place where it's where it naturally fits the best. And then tighten these up before tightening these up. So tighten this up when everything's in alignment, and then tighten these up at the end. Otherwise you might end up with a misalignment again. So look down the chain there, just make sure everything looks straight before you get this retensioned. As I said before, a good way is to turn the wheel backwards and forwards a few times and just make sure there's no effort for that chain to try and jump off the track there, off the sprocket. Also take a look at it, just make sure visually it looks straight, and then you can go and snug things back up again. So when you're all ready, just go ahead, tighten everything back up again. Check the chain tension, just make sure there's a good bit of slack in there, and you should be ready to go. All right, tighten everything up, go ahead and put that cover back on. The next most common problem I have with these, and this is the front wheel of the bike, is the dreaded wheel squeak. Pick that up. That noise is obviously annoying and makes you feel like there's something wrong with the bike. We're going to go ahead and look at that. So more often than not, it is caused by the brake pad. And there are 3 adjustments here. There's this one here, there's this one here, and there's this one here, which brings it in and out. So we're gonna go ahead and make some adjustments to those. If you look down here, which is a little bit hard to see, you will see that on one side or another, the brake caliper is touching the disc here, causing that squeak. So we're gonna go ahead and fix that. Pretty fiddly job, but keep adjusting these 3. You can also use a light and shine it down so you can see when the disc is hitting. This disc here is hitting the pads inside the caliper there. My recommendation is just adjust it so it's pretty good and the brakes work to your satisfaction and call it good.